3 months ago, I was preparing for what I thought would be the happiest moment of my life with my fiancé, James. Now I'm staying in my best friend's guest room, browsing apartment listings, and trying to piece together how everything fell apart. James and I met in 2021, and within 6 months, we were practically glued to each other. After a year and a half, we decided to move in together. When James first brought me to meet his parents, his father, Henry, was friendly but reserved. His mother, Margaret, however, grilled me about my upbringing and social ties with a forced smile that never quite reached her eyes. I mentioned that my dad was a carpenter and my mum worked as a classroom assistant, and I noticed Margaret's face tighten before she quickly covered it up. James later dismissed it, saying she was just overly cautious and traditional, coming from a family that prized certain social circles. He assured me he didn't care about those things. I trusted him because, well, love can cloud your judgment. When James proposed last year, I was thrilled. It happened during a romantic getaway at a charming bed and breakfast upstate. We planned a modest wedding, nothing too lavish, as we were saving for a house. But trouble started brewing as soon as we shared our engagement news. Margaret demanded to oversee every detail. At first, her involvement seemed helpful. She knew vendors and offered to help since my job kept me busy. But it soon became clear she was seizing control. The venue I adored was deemed too plain. The menu I picked wasn't up to their family's standards. The dress I loved, she called it tacky. James kept saying it was simpler to go along with her than argue over every choice. I compromised to keep things calm, but each decision she overruled dulled my excitement, turning wedding planning into a burden. The breaking point came during a dinner at their house 3 months before the wedding. Margaret had invited 2 of her friends, Laura and Diane, and I realized mid-meal that I was being scrutinized like a candidate at an audition. They exchanged subtle looks whenever I spoke. At one point, Laura asked where I spent my childhood summers, and I chuckled, thinking it was a joke. I explained that my family's vacations were camping trips or visits to my grandmother in Ohio, and the room fell silent. After dinner, while I was helping in the kitchen, Margaret cornered me. She started casually mentioning James's ex, Emily, who apparently came from a prominent family with a summer home in the Hamptons. Then she said James was destined for greatness and hoped I wouldn't hold him back. When I asked what she meant, she didn't hold back. She said I was nice but lacked the right background to support James's future, that my lack of sophistication would embarrass him in elite circles, and that I wouldn't know how to host properly or make valuable connections. Stunned, I called her out for being rude. She gave a patronizing laugh, saying my reaction only proved her point about my lack of poise. I left the kitchen and told James we were leaving. In the car, shaking, I recounted everything. I expected him to be furious for me, but he went quiet, saying she didn't mean it that way and was just concerned about our future. He even suggested I might have misread her tone. That night sparked our first major fight. I was floored that he defended her. He later admitted Margaret had been voicing doubts about our compatibility for months, planting seeds about whether I'd fit into his envisioned life. The worst part? He was starting to buy into it. Over the next 2 weeks, our relationship unraveled. James grew distant, staying late at work. When he was home, he raised new concerns about our differences, things like whether our backgrounds would complicate raising kids or if I'd feel out of place at his work events. It all culminated at another dinner at his parents' house, supposedly to smooth things over. James begged me to attend, claiming Margaret wanted to apologize. I went, hoping for resolution. There was no apology. Instead, Margaret made snide remarks about my outfit, my manners, even my speech. When James stepped out to take a call, she leaned across the table and said, with chilling conviction, that I was nothing without her son, that he deserved far better and that I should leave before dragging him down with my mediocrity. When I started crying, she rolled her eyes, saying my emotional display proved I lacked refinement. I grabbed my things and left the dining room. When James returned, I told him what happened, expecting support. Instead, Margaret spun it as me overreacting to innocent wedding advice. In the car, I gave James an ultimatum. Either we cut contact with his mother until she respected me, or the wedding was off. He didn't stand up for me. Instead, he said maybe she had a point. Maybe we were moving too fast. Maybe our worlds were too different. The man who once swore he didn't care about status was now echoing his mother's elitist views. I slipped off my engagement ring, set it on the dashboard, and asked him to drop me at my friend Sarah's place instead of our apartment. He didn't protest. The next day, while James was at work, I packed most of my belongings from our place, left my key with a note saying I'd arranged to collect the rest later, and blocked Margaret's number. I kept James unblocked in case he came to his senses. A few days later, he sent a weak text about being confused and needing time to think. I replied that there was nothing to think about. He either wanted a life with me based on love and respect, or he didn't. His response was that we should pause until his big work project was done and then reassess. That was his answer. After 3 years, he couldn't even fully end things, just wanted to keep me on hold. I told him not to contact me again. According to mutual friends, James has been telling people we mutually decided to cancel the wedding due to differing goals. Meanwhile, I've been rebuilding my life. Yesterday, I got a voicemail from Margaret. I don't know how she got my new number, but she was tearful, asking to talk about James. I deleted it before finishing it. Their drama isn't my problem anymore. The wedding would have been next weekend. Instead, I've booked a solo beach rental on Airbnb. Not the honeymoon I planned, but maybe the fresh start I need. Thank you all for the overwhelming support on my original post. The first month after the breakup was a fog. I stayed on Sarah's couch longer than intended. She's an absolute angel. Each morning, I'd wake up disoriented, reaching for James before reality hit. I lost my appetite and dropped 10 pounds unintentionally. Sarah started leaving granola bars out because I'd forget to eat. I spent hours scrolling apartment listings without making calls, as signing a lease felt like admitting it was over. Sarah never pushed, but after 3 weeks, she suggested checking out a place in her friend's building. It was a modest one-bedroom with a tiny kitchen, but it was affordable and close to work. I signed the lease that day. Moving in was tough. I'd left most of my furniture at James's place, too overwhelmed to deal with movers. Sarah and her boyfriend helped me grab basics from IKEA: a bed, a small sofa, a table that doubles as a desk. The apartment stayed bare for weeks. I lacked the energy to make it mine. Work became my anchor. I'd show up early, stay late, and take on extra tasks to avoid my empty apartment. My supervisor noticed and gave me more responsibilities, things like liaising with other teams and training new staff. It felt good to be needed. 2 months post-breakup, I ran into James's brother, Tom, at the grocery store. I nearly ducked behind the cereal aisle, but he saw me and approached, looking uneasy. He apologized for what happened and said he'd argued with Margaret about her treatment of me. It was awkward but validating to hear someone from James's family acknowledge the wrong. He mentioned James was struggling, which was the first I'd heard of it. I thanked him but kept it short, not ready to re-enter their world. A week later, my college friend invited me to a party. I almost bailed, but Sarah insisted I needed to reconnect with life. She was right, though I'd never admit it. At the party, I met Ryan, my friend's cousin visiting from out of town. We ended up chatting in a group, and he asked for my number. I surprised myself by giving it to him. Our first date was coffee on a Sunday, relaxed and easy. Ryan was refreshing to talk to, and for the first time in months, I didn't think about James for hours. He works in a completely different field, lives in a simple apartment like mine, and has a normal family uninterested in status or connections. When I shared a brief version of my breakup, he listened without trying to solve it. Around the 3-month mark, a work opportunity arose. My company was reorganizing, forming a new team, and needed someone to step up. My extra efforts had been noticed, and my manager urged me to apply, warning it would mean longer hours. I hesitated, my confidence was still shaky, but went for it. The interview process was intense. 3 rounds, a presentation I perfected late into the night, and a final meeting with executives. I didn't think I'd get it, but 2 weeks later, I was offered the role with a raise that eased my financial stress. It wasn't a fortune, but it rebuilt my safety net. Then I ran into Laura, Margaret's chatty friend, at the mall while shopping for work clothes. She acted overly chummy, then dropped that James had lost his job. The big project he'd cited as his excuse for our break had collapsed due to missed deadlines and mismanagement. Laura said he was struggling to recover, and that Emily, his ex, had briefly reconnected with him post-breakup, only to leave again. She hinted I'd dodged a bullet winking. A week later, at a restaurant with Ryan, I spotted Margaret across the room with Henry and another couple. Our eyes met, and I braced for her usual icy glare. Instead, she approached our table, gushing about how great I looked and mentioning my new job. How did she know? Ryan looked puzzled as I introduced him. Margaret's smile faltered when she realized I was on a date, but she kept up the act, saying everyone missed me and hoped we'd catch up. I mumbled something vague, and she left. Ryan noted she seemed intense. Then came a Facebook message from James to Sarah, asking about me and if I was dating. Sarah didn't reply, knowing I'd want privacy. Through friends, I learned James had moved back with his parents, jobless. Margaret wasn't handling it well. I tried to focus on my life. Ryan and I were growing closer, decorating my apartment together, making it feel like home. My new role was demanding but rewarding, though some days left me doubting myself. Then, last Friday, I got a voicemail from an unknown number. It was Margaret, tearful, saying she needed to talk about James, that she'd made a mistake, and wanted to fix things. 6 months ago, she said I was nothing without him. Now she was begging for my help. I didn't call back, but the message lingered. Ryan asked what I wanted, what would bring me peace. I woke up to more missed calls from Margaret and a text from a number I assumed was James's new phone. I haven't read it yet. Should I respond at all? It's been a month since my last update, and things have gotten bizarre. After debating for 3 days, I texted James's new number, asking what was going on. Within minutes, Margaret called from his phone. She'd been using it since I blocked her. Curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. She was a shadow of the judgmental woman I knew, her voice trembling. She asked about me, mentioned seeing me at the restaurant, then launched into an apology. She admitted she'd been awful, misjudging me based on shallow standards, and regretted pushing me away. She said James was lost without me, spiraling after losing his job, drinking heavily, and making bad financial choices. When I asked why she was telling me this, she said I was a steadying force James needed. The nerve of her, going from calling me unworthy to claiming I was his savior. I told her I was sorry for James, but that we'd been done for months, and I was seeing someone. She brushed it off, saying rebound relationships don't last, and that James and I had real history. She asked to meet for coffee to discuss James further. Against Ryan's concerned look, I agreed, thinking it might bring closure. At the coffee shop, Margaret looked worn. Hair in a messy ponytail, minimal makeup, tired eyes. She'd ordered my favorite drink, which was creepy since James must have told her. For an hour, she detailed James's downfall. He'd burned through his savings, made a bad investment in a friend's failed startup, maxed out credit cards, and was now living in his childhood bedroom, barely job hunting. She never directly asked me to take him back, but kept saying how he thrived with me, how I motivated him. When I reminded her she once thought I wasn't good enough, she teared up, saying she'd misjudged what James needed. I left feeling empty, not satisfied. I said I'd considered talking to James, but made no promises. The call started the next day, Margaret following up, mentioning James asking about me, suggesting job openings. I let them go to voicemail. Her messages grew frantic, mentioning Henry threatening to cut James off and family friends gossiping. She even referenced my parents, wanting to make amends. Tom, James's brother, texted to apologize for her, saying James's drinking had worsened post-breakup, contributing to his work failure. He said Margaret partly blamed herself, but stressed James made his own choices and I shouldn't feel obligated to fix him. Ryan and I were getting serious, talking about moving in together. His calm support contrasted sharply with James's family drama. Then Margaret showed up at my workplace, waiting in the parking lot with James's resume, asking me to recommend him at my company. I was furious. I told her this was inappropriate and to stop contacting me. She broke down, sobbing about not knowing how to help James. Co-workers saw, and Sarah had to deflect their questions. Then James texted, apologizing for his mother and for listening to her over me. He said he missed me and was too ashamed to reach out sooner. I felt nothing, no lingering love, just exhaustion. I didn't respond immediately. Margaret called the next morning, asking about James's text. I snapped, calmly telling her I was blocking her, that further contact at work would be reported as harassment, and that her elitist parenting might be why James was struggling. I texted James, forgiving him for the past but saying we had no future, urging him to seek help for his drinking and finances, and asking him not to contact me. I blocked them both. The next day, Margaret DM'd me from a new Instagram account, accusing me of being cold and prideful. I blocked it. She sent emails from new addresses and a handwritten letter to my apartment, each more desperate. The final straw was last weekend when James and Margaret showed up at my apartment while I was having dinner with Ryan. James looked rough, clearly tipsy, with Margaret hovering. James tried to reminisce, Margaret interjecting about how great we were. I stepped into the hallway, saying their visit was inappropriate and that I'd moved on. James turned to Margaret, saying he'd warned her this would backfire and apologized for not shielding me from her before and now. I haven't heard from them since. Tom texted that he's taking James to Gamblers Anonymous. I thanked him, but didn't ask for more. Ryan and I are planning a weekend getaway. I've changed my email, and my manager's watching for unwanted visitors. Life's better than I imagined a year ago when I was planning a wedding to the wrong person. I hope this is my last update.